Thanks so much for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be amongst the, I think, world's best practitioners of the crowd economy. So I'm Satish Kataria. I'm founder and managing director of Catapooolt. We have been doing crowdfunding in India for the last 2 years now. I have a brief stint into crowdfunding before that as well. Brought it into India in 2010, which was almost 5 years back from now. I think, but at that point in time, the idea was really too beyond its time. So we took a back seat. So anyway, I think what I intend to do here is give you a perspective on how crowdfunding is shaping up in world's largest democracy. What are the perspectives and what are the challenges, and where do we see the growth happening? But before I do that, let me ask you one very simple question. Can any of you make a guess when did crowdfunding actually start in India? Any random guess? Sorry?
700 years ago.
Well, yeah, that's really too wide. Sorry? Okay, so I'll share a very interesting example of crowdfunding which happened in India almost 40 years back. This film needs to be played. $500,000 farmers in Gujarat. So this was a film which was made in 1976 by Sam Benegal, who's one of the well-known directors in India, and almost 5 lakh farmers contributed about 50 Singapore cents each to make the production target for this film. And that was a true blue example of crowdfunding happening in India, even when the whole term was not defined. This film was based on the Amul, the milk cooperative foundation, which was started, which is known by Amul as of today. So coming from here, I think crowdfunding has come a big way into India, and especially in the last 3 years, especially when we talk about the online-based crowdfunding platforms. Incidentally, I believe crowdfunding as a concept is quite well ingrained in Indian psychology, because when we talk about our religious festivals, when we talk about our social festivals, people often go out to their friends and family and relatives and collect money to do those events. So technically crowdfunding is not something new in India, but yes, the online crowdfunding platform is definitely new in India. So let me give you a little bit perspective on what's happening today. So there are about 4 key players in India today, excluding Catapooolt. So we have players like Whisperry, which is focusing on creative ventures, reward-based crowdfunding. We at Catapooolt are domain agnostic. So we look at creative ventures, we look at social impact ventures, we look at sports. We are also looking at early stage startups. So we look at into any other category where we feel crowdfunding can really help. We have players like Let's Venture, which are looking into quasi-equity. So what they are doing is they offer early stage startups and they solicit interest from investors online. However, the deals are structured offline since equity crowdfunding in India is also not allowed yet. And then we have players like Keto, which is only focusing on social ventures in India. And then besides these 4 players, we have 8 more small players, and there are new players which are coming up almost every month, which basically reflects that crowdfunding today is started to be getting accepted in India. It's getting a lot of support from Indian media. And it's also getting to really being talked about. If I look at the numbers, over the last 2 years, if I look at all the crowdfunding platforms combined, we have been able to raise about $4 million odd, and this has been done over about 300 odd projects from 14,000 contributors. The funds come in both from Indian people as well as from the Indian diaspora, which is spread all across the whole world. The investors in India are showing a lot of interest in investing into crowdfunding platforms. Over the last 2 years, almost $2 million have been invested in crowdfunding platforms, and this investment is coming from both angel investment networks, people like Kolkata Angels, who are investing into crowdfunding platforms. They have invested in us as well as in Cato, as well as coming from individual angels like Rajan Anandan, who heads Google in India and is one of the most prolific angel investor in India, and he has invested into Wishberry. So that basically indicates that even investors in India are looking at the potential of crowdfunding, and they're getting more and more stronger in belief of the potential that crowdfunding has in India. Okay, talking about what projects are getting focused. So till date, we only are getting projects from creative space, from social impact ventures, and one thing which is also coming up big time is sports. So a lot of sports people, a lot of sports teams are today using crowdfunding platforms in India to get funds for their training requirements, because in India, unfortunately, if you're not a cricketer, you're really poor. So that's the unfortunate part. What is not happening yet in India is technology products. So a lot of early stage technology products are still not looking at the potential of crowdfunding, though now things are changing over the last 6 months and they have started coming on board. We haven't had a very big example of games, though India is quite big in online gaming and game development, but they still haven't tasted the potential of crowdfunding vis-a-vis other platforms like Kickstarter, where gaming is almost 20% of the whole projects. We haven't seen big players in real estate crowdfunding and in individual pursuits. However, this doesn't mean that there is no potential, because I think all these sectors, be it technology startups, be it games, be it real estate sector, offer huge potential in India, given the market that they have, and it's just a question of time that they will soon be coming onto crowdfunding platforms. Let me talk about some of the projects that are being getting funded. The 4 projects listed above the blue line are what we at Catapooolt have been doing. So these are, as I said, it's a film project, Manjunath, which was a true life biopic on a guy called Manjunath Samangam. This film was able to raise about 10,000 Singapore dollars within a span of just 20 days. We are doing projects like Everest Again, which is a project supporting the only Indian mother who holds the world record of climbing Everest twice. So we're helping her to raise funds for her next ascent onto Mount Everest. There are a lot of innovative projects that we are now helping up. There's a project called Green Souls, where 2 students have developed a patented technology to convert old sports shoes into slippers, because in the whole world there are still billions of people who can't afford a good set of slippers. So that is where this project is aiming to mobilize funds for. And there's a project called M0, which will be India's first supercar. So we're helping them to raise funds for their initial prototype development. Then there are some other projects which I would like to mention on other crowdfunding platforms, like the Indian ice hockey team. They currently raised about 5,000 Singapore dollars using a crowdfunding platform, since they needed funds to participate in international championships. And then there are some individual cases like this little girl Ria, who wanted to raise about $10,000 to cure her cancer treatment, and she was able to successfully raise funds. So this basically would give you a perspective of the kind of projects that are currently doing crowdfunding in India. Yeah, so looking at the road ahead, I think all of you must be aware of how e-commerce have really boosted in India over last 3 years. So from almost being nothing to today being a multi-billion-dollar industry, e-commerce have come a big way in India. And what we're trying to understand is that will crowdfunding or crowd sharing or the crowd economy be as big as that? So let's look at the possibilities out here. So let's look at the factors which we think can make it work. Obviously, I think all of you must be aware that India is sitting on a lot of positive demographics. We are still one of the world's youngest population, which we are still one of the world's most propellant of online media. So almost 20% of Indian youth population is today already online. There's a huge penetration of mobile in India. And more than anything else, thanks to the fact that we have a huge population, we also have a huge internal market for all the new products and ideas which come up. And that itself gives a boost to a lot of new ideas which come up. Indeed, India is known for its adaptability to the new technologies which are coming up. So be it mobile, be it e-commerce, be it fast food. So all these concepts, while they took some time to come to India from the world, but then once they come to India, they really scaled up in no time. Looking at the startup investment culture, I'm sure you must have again heard about big stories about how the whole world is now looking at investing into Indian startups. So the Indian over last one quarter itself, almost $1.7 billion have been invested, which is almost 300% jump over last year. And the startup investments in India have already crossed the startup investments in China as of now. We have a strong diaspora. So today we have almost 26 million Indians spread all over the world who have almost $86 billion with them, and they are looking at opportunities to bring that money into Indian ideas. Okay, the stumbling blocks quickly. So obviously the biggest stumbling block is the cultural perception on giving. I think there's the same issue in Singapore as well. So the local people are still not attuned to the whole idea of giving beyond charitable cause. So that's one bigger challenge which needs to be brought in, which needs to be trained about. Online awareness does not mean online transactions. So while people used online media, but that does not lead to transactions. So today, if brands want business volume, they have to use a lot of offline media. Needless to say, there are regulatory gray areas. SEBI has just issued the discussion paper on equity crowdfunding, but it's almost been 9 months, and we are all waiting on the next steps that they would propose. Other than that, in India, there are challenges with respect to outflow of money. So that basically limits us not to be able to take international projects on the platform. There are limited contributor buckets. As I said, most of the contributions on Indian crowdfunding platforms are still coming from very limited HNIs or corporate pockets. The masses have still not been looked at. So I think that's a huge volume of people who are still waiting to come on crowdfunding and be a part of this whole movement. There's a limited awareness on how crowdfunding works. A lot of projects still feel that if they put their project on a crowdfunding platform, magic will happen and money will come. That doesn't happen. So they still need to be trained and handheld into how crowdfunding will work for them. And yes, obviously there are payment challenges. I think more than 50% of India is still unbanked. That's where and it's only about 20% of India which uses credit card today. So that's one challenge which needs to be answered. Okay, so let me talk quickly about what does it mean to to do crowdfunding to value conscious markets. So as we said, what we have been doing over the last 2 years, we've been trying to adapt a model. So we have been adding more and more reward structures to be able to appeal to the value consciousness of Indian consumers. Indeed, Catapooolt, we had about 3 levels of rewards. Other than the other platforms which just give 1 level of rewards. So we added rewards from our platform. We added loyalty points to the whole ecosystem. As I said, do it yourself does not work here. So the platforms have to work very closely with the projects to help them understand how crowdfunding will work for them. And then we are looking at more and more domains and trying to understand that how they can benefit from crowdfunding. So as I just mentioned, so we're looking at games, real estate, franchising as possible industries which would adapt to crowdfunding. Yes, we are looking at more evolving models. So we are soon going to launch India's first hybrid funding model, wherein we would be able to help startups raise fund partly by crowdfunding and partly by soliciting interest from investors. So this basically becomes a win-win situation for all the 3 elements of the ecosystem. And yes, I want to focus a little bit on this. So as I just said that in India, you really need to have a very, very strong offline presence to be able to engage more people and reach out to more masses where the actual money lies. So these are some of the partnerships that we are, we already are getting on board. For example, we're tying up with Payback, and this will be perhaps one of the first user cases for Payback itself, where loyalty points can be used to contribute to creative ideas. So that's a very innovative user case which Payback is working with us on this. we're tying up with mobile payment gateways like Money on Mobile, which other than the mobile wallets have a physical presence of more than 3 lakh outlets, retail outlets across India. And they serve tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And the idea out here again is to use these retail outlets as publicity outposts for our projects and to be able to use these outlets as cash collection points towards the contributions. We are talking very closely with Times of India, which is one of the largest publication house in India, and trying to understand that how we can work with them to create more buzz and more awareness on what crowdfunding is, what are the kind of projects that we are helping up, and how can more and more people engage with them. We have tying up with bodies like NASSCOM and doing activations, physical activations with them, reaching out to startups, doing events like live crowdfunding pitch, where we invite investors and communities and people do a live, it is a live crowdfunding pitch where people actually give us money after they hear out pitches from startups. So we're doing those kind of activations. Again, as I said, what we also realized that most of the crowdfunding platforms still talk from a language of the funder, that you should come here to get your project funded. What we are trying to do is change it the other way around and trying in a language of contributor. So we're trying to convince and engage more people, saying that how does it benefit the contributor to come and be part of these ideas? Can crowdfunding platform become the marketplace of innovations in India? Looking at the fact that there are so many upcoming great early stage startups which are now getting born out of India. And yes, we are looking at possible collaborations with other Asian players. As I said, there is no pan-Asian player yet, and that is where we feel a lot could happen. If we are able to find right partners. We as a platform can offer a good on-ground support in India, since that's a difficult market to understand, but we have been there for last 4 years, and we understand what works, what doesn't work. And then there are a lot of new avenues which we feel can benefit the other Asian platforms if they are able to access the Indian market. As I mentioned about early stage startups, which is today getting a lot of interest from global investors, real estate. So in India, your average real estate return is more than 25%. So that could be an attractive avenue to look at, to tie up with Asian real estate crowdfunding platforms who are looking at presence in India and hence working on a collaborative model with them. Yep.
Great.
That's it.
Satosh.